Welcome all to the NewCrown podcast. My name is Darryl.
And I'm Mike.
And
Mikael.
Was that a question? Or are you trying to figure out
I am trying to figure out who I am. That's like my old thing.
Aren't we all though? Aren't we all? So
Yes.
essentially we're back with a brand new season of the podcast. I have a new co-host, Mikael Romulus.
New? Didn't I do one episode? Yes, my name is Mikael Romulus. I am an ex-student at Concordia. Well, I am waiting for my graduation. And like Darryl, I studied in film studies, but I'm also a concept artist. I draw, I do storyboards, I do concept art for character designs. I also want to direct in the future. And that's pretty much who I am and what I do.
Oh yeah, actually, I want to expand more on that. Like, what is? Because right now we're kind of starting off in our film journey, if you will, film director journey, and I just want to know, like, what kind of projects are you aiming to do, like, to start off your career? Are you like, just want to throw yourself into deep end and go full on like blockbuster type thing, or you're like, I want to start off?
I mean, I don't think that's even. Unless it is, I don't think that's really possible. I think I'd have to like start with something small. First, I think I would start by just finding myself on set, or like build some sort of proximity to the film world, find a job that would get me close to it, and then get closer and closer and closer, get that opportunity, find it, and cherish it, make something. I would start small, and then, project after project, it would grow in scale. And then at some point I would, make the blockbusters that got me into films in the first place. And I mean, it's going to take time, but it's going to take the time that I'll have to take. And
but if in a hypothetical scenario, because it does happen sometimes. I mean, like Tarantino's first film may be like, a small independent film once upon a time, but it became like Reservoir Dogs became a massive sort of piece of art that will forever be embedded in history of cinema. So my point is, like, essentially, if you were given the option of like directing, I don't know, like a very, very massive book or a book adaptation movie, or perhaps a movie that that has quite a big fan base. So I don't know. Well, I mean, obviously, I hope they don't do this, but I hope they don't do a remake of Lord of the Rings. But if essentially they wanted to create a new remake of Lord of the Rings and they offered it to you,
no. Next, no. Basically, for like, regardless of what's being adapted, I would prefer developing the skills on my own part, like learning how to like improve as a director before I'm being dumped like this huge IP. I think that would suck for any director who would have the displeasure of actually accepting this. Like, sure, it could go well. I'm sure, you can go on IMDb and see some miracles here and there, but those tend to be like the exception to the rule. But for me personally, I wouldn't want that responsibility to do that to an IP that is so beloved. I think that'd be insane. And I wouldn't be resilient enough as a director or competent as an artist yet to actually, because adapting, like, it's one thing to make a huge, big budget movie, but it's another thing to like adapt. That just brings so many other things into play that, like, as a first-time director would be freaking ridiculous. So no.
No, I mean,
no.
It's free money. You know what I mean?
I'll get the free money doing something else.
You could create.
That doesn't have so much writing on itself.
There's a lot of what I've noticed lately from the quality of film that's been getting out nowadays. I feel like, especially, I mean, obviously there is a reason for why the writing itself is kind of shit. We'll talk about that on a later episode, on more on that. But I mean, it's very easy to, like, if you know the right person and they know the right person, they might give you, all you need is the funding, really. So they might give you the opportunity to, I don't know, make the new and improved version of Hellboy. And
no, I'd rather just say, like, even if the project was given back to me, I'd be like, hey, like, I try to call Guillermo and tell him, like, hey, like, just because I'd rather have him do the thing again, a third one, rather than doing it myself, even if I go to have like some sort of crazy repetition as a filmmaker.
Nice.
Just for my own entertainment.
Yeah.
I'd rather see my boy Guillermo make
Right.
the third one because everyone's been wanting this, and yet
Yeah.
you have these other things happening, which I don't know how that works, but
But
yeah, but
it's a good.
that's
So
more.
you're essentially you're a very big fan of cinema from the get go. It's not about actually making in the industry in terms of like being famous or whatnot. You actually just genuinely love the art of cinema and filmmaking itself.
Yeah, I mean, my main motivation to become a director is basically to create more of the things that I love. Like
Mm.
that's the point. Obviously, it's gonna become a job. It's not gonna be easy. Obviously, we all know that. Um, but that's the point. I'm basically trying to create films that I would watch over and over and over and over. You know, to basically mix, you know, have all of the films that I make contain qualities from so many different films that I love, and hopefully the things that I like about the ones that I do, those are qualities that are shared with my audience and with a large amount of people enough so that it can be successful. And I wouldn't doubt, I wouldn't doubt it because I think my taste in films are pretty good, are pretty strong, and I'm pretty confident of with like what I like and why I like them, which is a very important thing to understand. So I think when you understand those things and you have it's easier to recreate those things into things that you want to work on. So
So,
that's the goal.
so I have a question. Like for your first movie, they say you have an opportunity. You've been given the opportunity to realize an actual movie. You are the director. You have a script that you're very proud of, and that you're confident that could actually be a good movie and be adapted. You have people who are experienced veterans that support you, to have your back, that they'll show you the way to make this movie. What is this first movie like? What kind, what a genre? What's the genre? What is like? Is it very much a futuristic sci-fi? Is it more of a horror? Is it more of a this, or what is it? What's Mike Romulus's first movie? Essentially, we want to know.
Definitely horror coming of age story. I don't want to
Mm,
I don't want to spoil anything, but I've been getting attached to this idea that I've been kind of working on, and it's definitely horror, but also coming of age, because the horror aspect is it's kind of a cliche thing to do nowadays, where the horror motif is used as like either an allegory of it or a metaphor of this thing that we humans kind of deal with in our lives. And but the coming of age aspect brings in the theme that I kind of want to that I kind of want to use, because when you have younger characters, they're more vulnerable, and that allows the horror to be a little more impactful. So I think it would be kind of a cool thing to exploit for this story that I'm trying to tell. But yeah, definitely horror, definitely coming of age, but especially horror because as someone who grew up on superhero movies, especially a particular superhero movie that was directed by a horror director, Sam Raimi. I do find that those big budget movies that I love the most stylistically, they're always directed by a filmmaker who has a strong background in horror. Also, you brought up Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, and it's crazy to go back to those earlier movies of his and actually see the more raunchy, campy um, aspects. Like you recognize them, except in Lord of the Rings, they're they're used in a more sincere, serious, dark, high budget manner. So it hits different, but it's still the same guy, just given a heck ton of money. So I'd be very happy to see that happening to me in the future.
interesting. So are you like kind of is Stranger Things inspiration for you in terms of like the genre of horror coming of age?
Not really.
Do you like the I'm talking about, do you like the actual sort of
That
not the
aesthetic.
series, the aesthetic, yeah, the
Yeah.
how they executed it essentially.
Well, funny enough, I was thinking about that a few days ago, but I actually prefer that whole 80s neon
Hmm.
aesthetic in that Super 8 movie. I
Okay.
preferred how
Yeah.
it was done then, because I feel like Stranger Things, the movie that it was trying to kind of um, the essence that it was inspired by was E.T. And I feel like Super 8 being a film directed by a guy who is so inspired by Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, I feel like it did a better job at capturing that specific atmosphere and aesthetic than Stranger Things, even though Stranger Things did some things a little more successfully. I mean, that's why it's Stranger Things grew to have like 5 seasons. I think they're like producing their fifth.
Yeah.
But Super 8 as a film did things that I liked more. And then I was kind of a fan of that. But in terms of horror, that's not the thing that's not what I tend to be attached to. It's a little more, it's a little bit scattered. You know, my favorite horror movie is like Black Swan. I just like well shot. You know, I don't have some kind of nostalgia for the 80s. I just like cool, crazy imagery. I do like the Satoshi Kon inspiration from like his movies, like Perfect Blue or Paprika. I like when you go nightmarish,
Okay.
you know, regardless of the setting.
Yeah.
Though I do like it when it's in a very kind of I like it. I like it grounded. I like it when it's when it's taking place in a mundane setting, really urban, and something weird happens, and that just triggers.
Yeah, essentially having
Yeah.
something odd and sort of distorted happen in like the most like everyday setting, essentially.
Right. I guess it's most stores, but I feel like there's
well, I mean, the thing
doing
is,
it in a way that's interesting.
the thing is like, because the horror trope is very generic, and like you go to a haunted house or you go to some thing, and then you have like some spirit come out, and that's the generic horror, and like essentially it's driven a lot by horror stories or like ghost stories or whatnot. And there's always like a twist, where like the ghost has like a specific past where I was connecting towards to the actual setting of the story. And so I find the same trope, like the interesting thing I also like about the coming of age horror is that it also brings about the element of the relatability that you have with the characters, because it's not only about the horror and the scare factor. I think it's more, there's also like the person trying to navigate through life, and like the horror is kind of a metaphor for that. It's like,
They're figuring it out, but it's
exactly,
tough and scary.
exactly. And because everyone kind of has gone through that phase in their life, or currently going through that phase in their life, it's kind of like the most relatable thing, and that everyone, no matter where you're from, everyone has that sort of that same experience that we're like trying to figure out. We're kind of thrown into this world, and then it's just up to you to navigate through all the horrors. So I do like the trope. I do like the genre very much. So I also enjoy the sort of juvenile humor, if you will. It's like it doesn't take itself too seriously. So it's like yeah, I don't know if you want, like in the beginning of Super 8, you just see like a bunch of kids just wanting to make a movie. It's just hilarious, and then they just encounter some.
I like that.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I especially, I actually preferred the kids in that movie. I mean, maybe it's the aspiring filmmaker in me. Well, now I can stop saying aspiring because I directed a documentary last year. But like seeing, I feel like this group of kids being like a film crew brought a metatextual aspect to the movie, that which made it a little more interesting and a little more endearing. Like, yeah, sure, in Stranger Things they play D&D, which you might have related to it more because of that, because you have you play it.
I play, yeah.
But I liked something about Super 8, the whole fantasy, this idea of, okay, imagine we're all like 10 to 15-year-old, and we're trying to shoot a film, and we're trying to make it super good, and we found a really cool we got a really cool location to make it happen, but then a train wreck happens while we shoot it. And something weird, like it's so out there and crazy, and as horrific that must be, I think it's a really strange and cool scenario to have, like this larger than life event intervene in the shooting of your amateur film. It's insane. It's actually a really great premise, and I kind of wish the movie was a little more than what it ended up being, as much as I enjoyed it. But I think that concept captivated me a little more, and not to mention J.J. Abrams directing, which I think is always like super underrated. But yeah. yeah, that's what's up with me.
Well, speaking of documentaries, because you said you directed a documentary
Yeah,
last year. Is it coming out soon, or is it what's happening with that one?
it's actually out. I actually directed it in 2021,
All right.
and then in 2022 it was pretty much the post production, but it got kind of delayed because of like the pandemic and all that stuff, and that
Okay.
got made things a little more complicated.
We'll put a link. We'll put a link in this description so you guys can watch it if you can.
Well,
And also, not to mention, you were in a documentary that I directed that ended up airing on TV. Was it last week? Yeah, last week. So how does that feel to be famous now?
feels weird, man. Feels weird.
Broadcasted across the nation of
Oh
Canada.
my gosh. Now I gotta like tiptoe and everything. You know, I'm a little more absent on social media because I don't want to say anything that'll get me in trouble. You know,
I'm curious because I have another subject on another participant of the documentary who owns that. But Foreign Legacies is the documentary we're talking about. It'll also be in the description so you guys can watch it. Um, he was talking about how essentially because of the documentary, his business had there's more people that started entering his business, his restaurant, and they're raving about how they enjoyed watching their movie, the documentary, and seeing, you know, their borough being represented, but also the community being represented. So, how do you feel about the documentary itself? Like, what was your reaction to when it came out? Did it affect you in terms of like people praising you for it, or just no one really cared?
I well, it's funny, a little bit of both, but at the same time, it's like kind of on my part. I've been seeing a bit more of an engagement,
Hmm.
but at the same time, I wasn't encouraging that engagement because I kind of did a big pause on my drawings because I was busy with university. I kind of had a new perspective on like the way my technique, my workflow when it came to drawing. So for like a whole year, I haven't posted anything. I haven't really completed a big project, so I didn't really have anything to give to my audience, if you will. So what would be the point on their part to actually be engaged? But now that I'm done with school, I have this newfound enthusiasm of like really propelling that again. Right now, I'm working on this like really intricate design that I'm trying to put out, but I want it to be perfect, which is why I spent like 3 months on it. So people, I'm also kind of asking my audience to be patient as well. What I should do is kind of post some of the process on my stories, give out glimpses just to carry them along with my projects. But at the same time, I don't want to spoil them. Sometimes I just want to surprise them with like boom, full piece.
Mhm.
But when it comes to social media, and for my own betterment with it, it's not always the best. You kind of want to always give out content, even though it's like even if it's a small thing, anything, just something to feed them.
Yeah.
But just for the experience of like seeing the thing that I'm working on for the first time, it might be contradictory to what's best for my social media account. So it's kind of a complicated thing that I have. Just another internal dilemma when it comes to my art, how I want my public to see my art, and also how I want my social media to farm my public's engagement with my art. So a lot of things to like kind of take into consideration.
For your drawings, do you want to put it like in a gallery or something? You want to put it on like a, I don't know, in a showcasing, or you're mostly social media based when it comes to your drawing?
Right now, it's mostly social media based, but for the longest time, I've been very open to the idea of actually having physical frames
Mm.
displayed in a room, to have a well-rounded gallery. But the problem is with my artistic arc, I feel like it's been difficult lately to have like a consistent like works where I, enough works where I could actually form a gallery with them, because there would always be like a long enough time shift so that I wouldn't be able to have like at least 5 drawings where you could say, okay, this is by the same artist.
Mhm.
It's always a lot of my art is triggered by like a phase or a mood that I was in a particular time. So the style, the aesthetics kind of changes, but it would be nice, by example, to have five five really strong sci-fi superhero-esque costume designs that are all as intricate as the other that I
Mm.
could put in a gallery. 5 really good ones that are based on people that actually exist, which is something that I do. What I do is I'm going to create a sci-fi fantasy character based on either a friend, either a famous, some actor that exists, or an artistic figure. Like right now, I'm actually working on a piece where the model is basically Zack Snyder,
Mhm.
and he's wearing this suit that is basically based on the aesthetic that you see in all of his films. So not only it's kind of like a stylistic exercise for me and a study, I like the look of Zack Snyder movies. I like the costumes in his movies. So I basically combine all of that stuff in one character, but also I kind of study his features, and most people, I think, will recognize the guy because now he's a face that people know.
Yeah.
So all of that together will create some level of engagement, I think, and I'm pretty excited to get that done.
You ever think of making like an animated video, an animated movie with those drawings?
Those drawings, no, actually, I do have an idea for animated movies in the future, but for now, I actually don't want to release anything about that. I don't want to. I have this thing where I'm scared of having those ideas taken away from me and used elsewhere.
I mean, you could copyright it. You could always copyright it.
Right, but that's another process, but like for now, I want to
Eventually, you're gonna have to copyright everything, because if you write a script, it's gonna be the same thing. If you want to pitch it to your producer, you have to you have to do it anyway. So might as well.
Right. Yeah. Right now I'm just like basically being very protective of the stuff that I've because especially since the ideas that I have, I'm feeling super confident about them.
Yeah.
So I really have like this specific order of how I want those ideas to be released and shown to the public, even though it's I'm not that big a deal right now, but I'm confident that it's gonna get bigger in the future. So right now I'm trying to be very kind of
protective,
tiptoeing.
Yeah. But within your family, has anyone watched the documentary?
No,
not yet.
No, not yet.
Are you gonna present them eventually, the project?
For sure. I think this is like a good reminder for me to do so. I'd have to, because like they'd actually be proud of it.
Yeah.
But I told them that I actually shot this thing with you, but I haven't shown them yet.
Okay. What do you think the response is gonna be? Or how do you think they're gonna react?
They'd be happy. They'd be happy to see that I'm still like actually active in that.
He's a big deal now.
Goga, oh my god, but like they'd be happy because, especially just to see that not only I'm just basically putting myself out there, but they're seeing not a pattern, or a through line of me still sticking to documentaries and being active in that thing, like having made a documentary, having been an interviewee in a documentary. They'd be happy that I'm kind of representing my culture. I feel like my segment wasn't that much about me being Haitian, but it's still there.
The identity was there, but it's very much a personal story. That's kind of the intention for the documentary. Essentially, like I wanted to make it so that there was a framework to work with. As like the through line was like the immigrants, but ultimately it was the story of each individual subjects and relation to those traditions that came with the immigrant mentality. And so like the idea, like it was interesting too, because when I was making the documentaries, a lot of different answers to some of the questions. So like you and another guy was talking about how you guys actually didn't feel that much sort of disdain from like diverting your from the traditional course, if you will. And so it's kind of interesting. It wasn't like just the same answers, where essentially it was like, oh yeah, my parents don't support me diverting, and they wanted me to be this and that, and that's it, that's all. But like, it's kind of interesting to see that there was also there was leeway there. There was more accepting, sort of parents that had, they were still stuck to the traditions, but they still believed that ultimately speaking, you will lead your life, so might as well lead it happily, and be autonomous with it, and give you the choice to fail at your own accord. And it's a like, what do you think the biggest struggle is right now for being an artist?
Man, it's right now. I feel like the struggle is much more like internal. It's much more like about like making sure that I actually latch on to all of the opportunities that are given to me, or actually being a little more passive in, this story of mine, not being a little more proactive, because the basically proving that I actually want the things that I want. But also, artist block is kind of a cliche one, but it happens. Basically figuring out where to start, how to get into the industry, even though I do have the contacts. But I feel like to really say that I have a struggle, I need to try a little harder to figure out if there actually is a problem on my part, because so far I've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
I've met good people. I have done good stuff that I'm proud of already with that documentary. My mom is actually the one who showed me, hey, there's this thing, like apply for it. Like being Black in Montreal, like that was basically the theme of the documentary. I applied, I made my thing. There were ups and downs, but I managed in the end. So that was an opportunity that was really given for me, and I took it. But I need to do that more and more and more. But when it comes to the projects that I want to do, that I'm gonna write, we'll see how that goes. I just need to actually complete a thing.
Yeah, well, ultimately speaking, like, the biggest thing about I know there's like this common stereotype, if you will, or common like kind of pathway where if you want to be involved in the industry, you have to be constantly surrounded by people in the industry. And I do agree with it in some ways, but also there's other ways of getting connections. Like, you don't actually have to be on set to see these people. You could go to festivals where their movies are being published and whatnot. And that's usually the outlet like most independent filmmakers take, where essentially when they like the same thing for me when I got the pitch for when I pitched for Foreign Legacies to be on TV. I went to RDM, which is the Montreal Documentary Festival, and I met a couple of people that had either, because usually like you kind of go in there with the mindset that you'll find someone that will buy your film, or that will sort of that will be like, oh yeah, sure, we'll work on it. It's like that's like very very
Naive.
it's very naive. It's very much like wishful thinking. So I went in there with the mindset like, oh, worst case scenario, I'll just meet some people and like collaborate with them, and see what happens. So I walked in there and literally I haven't got into the to the room yet, and I met this director guy who did a documentary up north, and he was talking to me about potentially making a movie or a documentary about the Filipino community here in Montreal. And we're pitching like stuff, and unfortunately we didn't get to work with each other because our schedules kind of didn't align. But we were kind of testing the waters and see what could work as a documentary concept. But once I got into the room, I got to meet a lot of people from internationally. There's so many people from different places that were representing festivals, and they were kind of looking for projects to sell. So essentially, you're kind of like, because that's how business is. You're basically trying to find someone that has a problem, trying to solve the problem, right? It's like on its most basic form, that's what it is. And so obviously these people, these broadcasters, these distributors, they have a problem being that they're looking for projects to sell and to sort of distribute, to get money off of ad revenue or whatnot. So you're there as a presenter, as a pitch, as a producer, to essentially deliver a product that could potentially help both of you. One, because you are the producer, so you could create your own product and how you want it. And if it aligns perfectly with what the distributors or broadcasters are looking for, then you guys have perfect synergy. You could actually, bridge the gap, if you will, and actually make a nice, full project. But it's fun. It's interesting how, like, whenever I talk to individuals who don't really have an like, obviously there's the sort of the nepo baby, the people who have like connection.
You don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, that's a different story. I'm talking about like the majority of us don't have that. The majority of us kind of have to like work harder. No, I'm just kidding.
Are you though?
We'll have to essentially like find creative ways to kind of get out there, and obviously you have to step out of your comfort zone. But that's the fun part, though, because essentially once you do step out of your comfort zone, it just kind of helps you on. It's a snowball effect where it kind of just helps you for the next project, the next project, the next project, and you create more and more and more contacts, right? So that's why I'm like, we should just like make a small product, like a small project. Like I have a couple of friends who do short films with me, and we just we pitch it to different festivals, and that's essentially how you get started. You don't have to be in a set per
How's
se.
that been actually? I was actually, I'd like to kind of return the question to you. Like, what have been the struggles in in that regard? Like, has it been easy in a way to like pitch it to the festivals?
Here, the funny thing about it is it's not hard per se. It's more like trying to differentiate the authentic, the real people, and the fake. So there's always gonna be people being like, "Yo, let's work together. We'll help you out, all this stuff, and like, all this." But like, you have to be aware enough, and also be perspicacious enough to know that there's people out there that are only for their own interest, right? So you have to make sure that your interests align with theirs. If it doesn't align with them, like there's no point in you like actually struggling and like going to help them out, because unless you're really like that generous, but you're in the
Yeah,
business for a reason, not to be generous, but like to also make your own footprint. So that's more the biggest struggle. It's like trying to find the people who are authentic, that have the same interests as you, that are not afraid to be, to really say their own opinions, and kind of like, follow through with their own opinions. Because it's easy to say like, oh, I'll just make a movie and do this, but actually doing it and actually figuring out the way to do it, that's the hard part. And so, like on RDM, I met a lot of people, great people there, but there was people that had like nothing to do with nothing. Like there was just like I would talk to them, and I was just like, yeah, from the first 5 seconds, I'm like, yeah, this is not it. But let me just spill my bullshit, and then we'll figure it out. I'm already here. I have 15 minutes with you, so I might as well waste both of our times.
made it.
And yeah, so but eventually, you like, after all of like the 100 failed attempts, the 101st will be like, it's your entry to the thing. So like, never give up, and just kind of continue doing it. Like, don't see it as a job, see it as like an opportunity. That's a different story. Like, it's a mentality essentially. And so that's how I see it. And now, I've got my movie on TV, and I have, a couple of friends whose business are flourishing, or flourishing, doing better, or doing, having more and more people come in because of it, and other people are getting more traction because of the documentary. So it's a win-win for everyone. It's
Excellent. But also, I kind of wanted to ask, like, when you actually chose the people that you wanted to kind of the people to whom you pitched the idea, and those who theoretically say, "Oh, we actually want to work with you."
Mhm.
What's the thing that made you choose them in the end?
Are you talking about the documentary specifically, or are you talking about like in general, like when I when I do projects with other people?
Maybe both.
Okay, so I'll talk about the documentary first. Documentary, essentially, because I have a lot of friends I talk to, and like on on the side, and we talk about stuff that we kind of relate to, like very very like real things, like real issues. And so, because I was kind of like looking for inspiration for a movie or whatnot, I said, why not? Because I already made a documentary prior to this one. I was on the Filipino sort of history, the immigrants, and I was like, you know what? Why not make a documentary specifically for our demographic? Because I know what it feels like, but because there's a lot of my friends that actually want to talk about this. This could be quite interesting.
Mhm.
So, like with you, it was great because I got someone that had the same perspective as me in terms of art, that was kind of like in the same journey, was trying to figure out his way into the industry, but also had other struggles that I may not personally be going through. So it would be nice insight to have, like, what's your perspective on this topic? So specifically, like the LGBT, and like the actual the conversations, because art and that is kind of like intertwined now. So it's like the conversations with that, and how maybe the industry may like, I don't know, outcast you sometimes for a specific role, or be more judgy over casting, whatnot. So I was like, okay, for you, that was the idea. I was kind of like, oh, let's get that perspective. And for other people, it was more like, because obviously I'm not in the health industry, so I was like, I'm interested in that perspective. Like, what's it like? Because on the outside, everyone's always talking, always praising about it, but then oh
You
no,
get there and it's
it's
completely
not.
different.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
like
greener. The grass not greener. So it's like, so it's interesting how we got a nice economy, and we actually talked about what the real sort of experience was like. And then there's other people that own businesses, and because I also own a business, I kind of want to see their perspective on what it was like. So it was very much things that I related to, and I wanted to sort of see their perspective on. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm curious to see where this goes. So I kind of just asked very 15 mundane questions, kind of like generic questions, as to what what your experience is like, and then everyone kind of elaborated on, and it made it sound interesting because it was very authentic. I didn't like I entice you to say some stuff. I just sort of like threw the ball at you and you just have fun. Let me
Right.
know.
But like through all that, like what are some of the most important things that you kind of learned through some of those most notable conversations?
For one, that no matter where you're from, it could be from anywhere in the world. We all kind of relate to very human things. So like we all go through different struggles every day. We all go through hardships, and we all go through to great days in our life. So like it's like instead of attacking each other, just work together, and
Yeah.
actually build upon each other's struggles and actually work with each other to like does not make it a competition of who suffered more. It's like we all suffered. It's bad. Now let's get out of this hellhole we were all in, and let's do it together. You know what I mean? Like let's be a collaborative force. As for the other question you were asking me, like the for people I work with generally, like in terms of like side projects, I usually kind of trust the same my surrounding people. I have like a small team, and we kind of we work with each other usually on big projects, and then people from my team will let me know if there's a project on the side that they want me to help with. It goes well sometimes, and other times it goes absolutely tits up. So it's like
As I've
it's yeah.
heard.
I mean, it doesn't hurt because ultimately I'm like it's experience for me, and I get to do what I love. So like I'm not really much of like I'm not gonna be like, this is such a Debbie Downer. I have to do all this. Like it's fun, but at the same time, I'll never work with you ever again. You know what I mean? Like it's it's all
Right.
hurting.
It's not too much of a loss, but at least it was experience, and people know that you were actually competent,
Yeah,
and
like
you did what you had to do, and
the thing I find quite interesting that whenever you do a project for someone else, because you're just there as like you're basically a cog. You're just there to like work and like help them out. It gives you the freedom to not care as much.
right.
So
Yeah, even yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
there's a little bit of freedom in that kind of in that sort of setting. I feel
yeah,
I see what you mean.
if you're the director and this is your passion project, like you're really like about it, and someone's slacking off, that's when you're more pissed off. You know what I mean? Like, yo, if why you even here? You know what I mean? But if I'm working on someone else's project, I'm like, all I do is I'll do my best. But if everything goes to hell, then yeah, that's not my project. I don't really care. I'm here to help.
Right. It's not your baby. That's like that's getting that's falling in a car
That's
crash.
essentially what I'm saying. It's kind of messed up. It's a messed up way of seeing things, but hey,
It's
it helps. It helps with the mentality of like whenever someone, especially. Oh, you know what's funny though? This is something I wanted to talk about also. So you know how like in Concordia there's film production, and film studies, right?
right.
I don't want to sound well, like this is kind of it's controversial, but like I feel like people who are in film studies kind of know more about film than those in film production.
Well, yeah, that makes 100% sense. That makes a lot of sense, and
Well,
it's
yeah.
not to dunk on the film prod people, but even though what I noticed on my first year starting in film studies is that I was surprised how like though these guys they all look like they've had like a heck ton of experience in the film industry, and they used that immense amount of experience to get into the program. So I'm like, okay, no wonder why I didn't get in.
Mm.
But at the same time, like I I I feel lucky that I wasn't thrown in this whole war zone that is film prod, and being given a camera and make homework movies versus all of those experienced people.
Yeah.
Like I feel lucky about that, but also at the same time, even though I didn't get to make a film except for one photo montage, like a photo
Yeah.
edit,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
in the later years. Like even then, like I feel like through what I learned, because it was basically a history class about movies,
Mhm.
but basically through that you kind of learn, and we get to watch movies obviously, and we get to analyze them and make like crazy thesis statements that are consistent about whatever. You just gotta make it make sense. But it forces you to see movies in a more thematic, contextual way, and
Yeah.
that's a big plus in a way for me. Like as someone who, like, I finished it, and it kind of made me understand certain things about how movies are made, but also specifically the things that affect how movies are made at a certain point in time. Like it's really obvious stuff, but like without that, I think the movies that I would have made, that I would have made, would have turned out very differently. And I think for the worst when it comes to me. So I'm glad that I went through this route rather than just having been dunked in film prod.
Yeah, but I also feel because their type of film is very much art house and very lenient towards a specific style. That whenever you make a movie that isn't part of their niche, they're kind of not interested. So the people I feel like that are accepted in film production all have the same kind of taste in terms of movies. So I feel like the program itself is very much a niche program where the style of film that they're making is very much oriented towards like a thought provoking sort of avant garde type film, and like majority of people don't really gravitate towards that. They're like, they like the standard commercialized, big blockbuster. Even in terms of independent, they're into like that type of stuff. So I feel like that's why whenever we watch movies in film studies, we kind of like gravitate towards more the subject matter because we've been watching those type of movies in our entire life, even if it's like old school 1950s, 1930s movies. It's kind of still the origin of the movies that we very much love, like the Citizen Kane of the world or like the Psycho or whatnot. We kind of still watch, like we saw how it evolved, and eventually Psycho kind of became a slasher, like Scream. Everyone watches Scream.
See, I kind of have like this, I don't want to make any like presumptions about film prod or like make this weird diagnosis, but I always had like this feeling from the stuff that I see, and like them making movies for that class, and it might not even be a bad thing, but I get this sense that they're using those homeworks, those assignments as an outlet to talk about themselves and to externalize things about themselves. And that might be that sounds like a good thing, but it's just sometimes I feel like there's lacking through the film itself. There's this part missing, that part that is meant to entertain a larger audience.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes it's not the point. Like there's the whole joke of like, wow, men will literally make movies rather than go to therapy. Like maybe obviously like movies can also, making the film can also be therapeutic. To display this thing. But sometimes some people might miss or omit the thing that makes the movie work as this piece of media that is made to be consumed by others. Because obviously we live in a society where art, you can't just live on making art to make art.
Well, it's the entertainment industry. It's the entertainment industry, so it has to be entertaining.
100%. It needs to be consumed, and it needs to be successful, because if not, you're gonna flop. It'd be great to think, it's like all that effort that you're putting in a film. It's rare to find someone who can afford putting all that effort just for themselves to appreciate.
Yeah.
And not to give out in a way that it comes back to them, through capital. That'd be great. But for now, that's not the world we live in. But maybe those homeworks are actually the only chance that they get to do that, because you're not paid to do homework. You're not.
Well, you are paying. You're paying the school, so.
But that is different, But maybe you are paying. You're paying the school, true, but you're paying the school to do films in a more therapeutic way. So maybe that's how they see it.
I hope it's therapeutic, because if not, then not only you're getting shit on by the majority of the people who are watching.
It's kind of a blunder. It's
Yeah,
kind of a blunder.
it's
Trying to
a
defend them basically.
it's a double L, but this time he doesn't make a W. So unfortunately,
Sad, sad face. But
but
like, yeah,
yeah,
basically what I'm trying to do is that I have my own views. I get like for like when it comes to like what the film prod people that made, and I'm kind of like, really like most of the people with whom I got to like chat with about movies and what they like and what I like, very different, which is kind of funny because I wanted to be in film prod,
yeah,
but just to like be equal about it, I'm like, if I were to defend them and if I were to defend the kind of movies that they made, the kind of movies that they like I think it's valid for those reasons. At least, if you did it for you, not everything needs to entertain me, not everything needs to entertain everyone. Sometimes you could just make some like put yourself out, like talk about yourself through movies. Like it's a very aspy thing to
yeah.
do, but like a lot of us are kind of are have to be a little bit when we come into like this very artistic field, obviously. So
I, I,
you
I've,
know,
I've, I've a question. I guess we'll wrap this up after this question.
sure,
Um, do you identify yourself as an artist?
yeah,
Okay. What do you define an artist? How do you define an artist rather?
you make art.
Oh,
I think
is that it?
I mean, briefly put, yeah. I mean, I'm an artist because I draw. My drawings are art. But if you could talk about, if I okay, if I
Because
were to
the term is
grow
so
as a
ambiguous.
filmmaker,
The term is so ambiguous because the art itself is ambiguous. It's not like
right? A lot of things is art.
yeah,
Cooking is art.
exactly, But you
So
go,
many things.
but a chef doesn't identify itself as an artist. Well, it depends if it's very like intricate about like a specific detail, whatnot. But he's regarded as a chef, or like if you're a designer, you're regarded as a designer. Like artist is more of like an umbrella term to like to everything really.
Right. But like I'm really saying like artist as like I want to create art,
Hmm.
good art, but at the same time I want my art to be successful. I want to create a good product, but I want my product to have a good artistic value.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be enjoyed by a lot of people because the things that I like about the art that I consume is very mainstream and
Yeah.
it works well for a lot of people. I just want to recreate it in a way that is a little more idiosyncratic. It's a little more me, but it's not. It's still going to be very accessible,
Accessible, yeah.
but it's still very much going to be art in my eyes. Like
Mm.
it's still, and what's going to make it art is not that it has an artistic value or it's really pretty. I mean, it's all art. Even like the most mainstream like McDonald's type thing out there is art. It's just maybe it's just lesser
It's
art.
mainstream.
Art.
It's mainstream art. That's the thing. It's like
Right.
I feel like nowadays it's like a very very big kind of
Well, it's connotation. It's
yeah, it's a very big connotation
basically
towards it.
it's like this meme on the internet. Whenever there's like this film that is like a piece of superhero film where there's a thing that happens that elevates it on this higher level, people go, "Oh, this is cinema. Oh,
Yeah,
this is pure kino." It's all
yeah,
cinema. There's just good cinema and there's bad cinema. You just say cinema with the Scorsese meme because to you, there's something a little heightened about
yeah,
it, but it's all art.
yeah,
We're all artists, whether we want it or not, because we are creating a very artistic thing. It's just that the purpose of it is to make money
yeah,
so that we can make more art in the future. But
yeah.
even with aside of all that, like yeah, I'm definitely an artist. It's just not
Yeah,
it's just not everything about my identity. I'm also a content creator. I'm also going to be, I mean, if I wanted to work, I'm going to have to be a businessman, and you kind of made me understand that idea a little more.
well, that's why
But yeah,
that's why I don't really have, because to me I have a very negative connotation towards an artist. It's like it's very not well. I mean, because it could be very it's very controversial, but it could be. I interpret it as like most artists to be very very narcissistic
mhm,
and kind of instead of doing art for an altruistic reason, they're doing it very much for themselves, as you were talking about earlier. And the problem with that is it doesn't leave room for any collaboration. So I
yeah,
don't even ever see people who are very like they identify as an artist. They're very much like the most stubborn, most like unenjoyable people ever because they really want their thing to be exactly the way they imagined it, and everybody that messes it up is the enemy of the state. So that's why to me, like whenever because I've worked with quote unquote artists in terms of film and they're very much in like a very big bubble where they're in their own world. They don't see anyone else. Nobody else exists. And like I will do this, and like you are just there to make my vision come true. And it's
Mhm.
that's not how collaboration works. Collaboration like entails where both of us have ideas. We exchange the ideas, and we kind of like make a new baby as a group, if you will.
Right.
But without making it sound too erotic. But
Makes sense still. I
yeah,
mean,
but
some people say that making a film is like, oh wait, no, I was getting confused with like this line from Bound, the Wachowski sisters' first movie, where they're basically making a heist is like they were making this, like basically they were saying making a heist is like having sex. Talking about it is like foreplay and everything, and it was a very interesting metaphor.
yeah,
But in a way, making a movie, I mean, people consider like a movie is like their babies, and like when what's this what do people say, like the prequel fans, when they talk about George Lucas
yeah,
having done the prequel, they say like it's like desecrating their baby or something. So
yeah.
I feel, yeah, which
Well, yeah, that's
yeah.
yeah. Bottom line being like, as it sounds very producer of me, but I don't like being whenever someone tells me, like, oh, are you an artist? I'm like, not really. I'm like, I do art, but I'm not an artist because again, I don't want to be associated with the freaking the psycho guy that like wants to like really micromanage every single department to be like you're doing this my way and like nah, I'm not like I'm more interested in like actually tapping into different, you know, people's, that's why you get them on your team because they're the best at what they do. So you want to like let them flourish at what they do, let each other kind of like work together. You create the outline, but everyone kind of performs their best at what they do, and the end result is very much a collaborative, wholesome project where everyone has equally contributed. It's not like, oh, I just used you as my paintbrush. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right. You don't want it to be, you don't want it to become like exploitative in a way, even though they're
yeah, in
technically
that sense,
paid. You want it to be like, you actually want it to feel like a whole like a system of
yeah,
like different cogs working together, and not just
of
he
course,
like a bunch of people being used by this one guy.
yeah. It's a,
Even though in a way like it is that to a certain degree,
I see,
but
I
you
see.
want there to be like a bit of,
Yeah, it's more of a independent, autonomous sort of project where they kind of like they figure it out themselves, and then I'll just set out the outline, kind of like the like the what you call it, the in the orchestra, the what you call the guy,
oh, the conductor.
the conductor, yeah. Essentially, the conductor is not doing like they're not playing the drums, they're not doing the whole thing. There's like a spreadsheet where everyone follows the actual song, but then everyone kind of yeah, and then everyone kind of like performs how they want to do it. They'll put in their own spice into it. It's not like I'm. It's not like Whiplash, essentially.
Right. And that, it's crazy. That's why, like, right now, I used to be all like, oh, a movie made by this director, oh, like it's gonna be perfect, then it's gonna be the same experience as this other movie that the same director did. But now I'm like, okay, this director made the movie that I really, really like. Okay,
Mhm,
who's the editor? Who's the
mhm.
composer?
Exactly.
Who's the cinematographer? Like there's a team, and like directors that I really like, where I get that vibe often. It's always the same team.
Yeah.
It's whenever it's like one director alone, rarely does it the vibe remains the same. There's a bit of similarities. Like right now, I'm doing like this David Fincher movie binge, and like I'm actually surprised at how like different the movies are.
Yeah.
Like there are similarities, but the lighting changes a lot. Like sure, there's the same atmosphere, but the editor changes, the
Yeah.
composer changes, and I think the average person would not know that like the same guy who directed like Panic Room was the same guy who directed The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, or the same guy who directed The Social Network.
Mhm.
Sure, there's like the yellow color palette, which is a very Fincher thing, but you take that away and they're like unrecognizable.
Yeah. There's a signature that the directors use, but ultimately it gives room for other craftsmen to actually put their own input in. And so as a
Right.
whole, that's what I'm trying to achieve. Because I mean, at the end of the day, I'm in like the most collaborative medium of art there is. Like literally, cinema has everything: has music, has drawings, has set design, costumes, makeup. You know, there's the filming itself. So I've literally the whole street of art in one little avenue. So like
It's art. It's
it's
art. You're an artist.
I'm not an artist. I'm not identified as an artist. I'm a producer. But
Oh
ultimately,
man.
I'll take advantage of it. So it's a good thing. But yeah, ultimately saying, uh, let's have a more collaborative effort in terms of our future endeavors.
I
And
agree.
yeah, I think we wrap this up. So yeah, it's as we said, I'll post the link of both of our documentaries in the description.
Woo.
And yeah, man. So it's been a NewCrown podcast. I am Darryl.
I'm Mike.
And see you guys in the next episode. When you want to post this? Actually, you want to post this every day, like every Wednesday, every Thursday.
I think.
Yeah, so we'll post it during we'll determine when on what specific day, but we'll post it every single specific day, so you guys will have a consistent stream of and we'll have guests as well. Look at that, we'll have guests.
Not just me. It's gonna be different people.
Different people. So if you guys want more input of other people, then stay tuned. Eventually we'll be on streaming services. For now, we'll probably just put it on YouTube. And yeah, man. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like if that's even still relevant. Subscribe. Leave a comment so Mike could bash all of you, and he'll.
I don't do that.
No, you don't. No. Send him a DM on Twitter, so he'll lose his mind.
People don't know me on Twitter, and I think I want to keep it that way.
All right, man. See you guys later.
See ya.